Hey there, urban explorers, and welcome back to the Urbanist's Lens. It's your host, Drew, here, with the ever-insightful Clark, ready for another fascinating discourse. How's it going, Clark? Did you survive another week in the city that never sleeps?
Well, Drew, I managed to snag a coveted seat on the subway this morning, so I'd say it's already a win in my book.
Hey, those are the little victories that keep us going, right? Speaking of victories, I finally made it to that new rooftop park everyone's been raving about. It's incredible how they transformed that old industrial space into a green oasis. Talk about bringing nature into the heart of the city.
That's the spirit. And it perfectly segues into our topic today, all about how cities around the world are becoming greener through innovative building codes and urban planning.
Exactly. We've
Yeah.
got a stack of fascinating reports and articles from places as diverse as Switzerland, Texas, and the Philippines, all diving into this trend. So fellow urban explorers, get ready to learn how cities are going beyond just planting trees, although that's always a good thing, and really integrating sustainability into their very DNA.
Let's start by unpacking what we mean by green building codes. Because it's more than just a catchy phrase, these are actual rules and guidelines that cities are implementing to encourage, or in some cases, mandate eco-friendly practices in construction and building
Right.
operations.
It's not just a suggestion box. It's becoming the law of the land in many places. And what's fascinating to me is that this isn't just some futuristic concept. Cities have been at this for a while now. Take Basel, Switzerland, for example. They've been requiring green roofs on new buildings since the early 90s.
What's interesting about Basel is that they didn't just mandate green roofs, they also invested in research to understand the different types of green roof systems and their effectiveness in managing stormwater, reducing air pollution, and even creating habitats for biodiversity.
Yeah.
It was a holistic approach that went beyond just ticking a box.
So they really did their homework and thought about the long-term impact, not just a quick green fix.
I love that. And it's not just happening in Europe. Austin, Texas, a city known for its tech scene, is also getting serious about sustainability. Austin's interesting because they're demonstrating that you don't have to sacrifice economic growth for environmental responsibility. They've implemented some of the most stringent energy efficiency standards in the country, and they've managed to attract major tech companies and a thriving workforce at the same time.
It's like they're saying, hey, we can be a tech hub and a leader in sustainable urban development. And then there's Iloilo City in the Philippines, which is really pushing the envelope with incentives for green building. They're considering offering property tax discounts for buildings with solar panels. Talk about putting your money where your mouth is.
Iloilo City is a great example of how cities can use financial incentives to nudge developers and building owners in the right direction. These incentives can help offset the upfront costs of green building, making it more attractive and financially viable.
Okay, so we've established that this green building trend is gaining momentum around the world. But what exactly do these green building codes cover? I mean, what makes a building green in the eyes of these regulations?
Well, energy efficiency is a huge focus. These codes often mandate things like better insulation, high-performance windows, and energy-efficient appliances and HVAC systems. It's all about reducing the building's overall energy consumption, which is good for both the environment and the pocketbook.
Right, those energy bills can add up, especially here in New York, where heating and cooling costs are no joke.
Exactly. And these codes often go beyond just reducing energy use. They also encourage the integration of renewable energy sources like solar panels and geothermal systems. It's about creating buildings that are not just energy efficient, but also potentially net zero energy, meaning they generate as much energy as they consume.
That's amazing. Imagine a city skyline where buildings are generating their own clean energy, and then there's water conservation, which is becoming increasingly critical in many parts of the world.
Absolutely. Green building codes often mandate low-flow plumbing fixtures like toilets and shower heads and encourage the use of rainwater harvesting systems for non-potable uses like irrigation and toilet flushing.
It's like creating a mini water cycle right within the building. And speaking of cycles, what about gray water recycling? I've heard that term tossed around, but I'm not entirely sure what it entails.
Gray water recycling is all about reusing water from sources like sinks, showers, and washing machines. It can be treated and used for things like irrigation or toilet flushing further, reducing the building's reliance on freshwater sources. It's a great way to close the loop on water use.
It's like giving water a second life, which is pretty cool. And then there's the whole aspect of sustainable building materials, which I think is particularly interesting. It's not just about how the building operates, it's about what it's made of in the first place.
Right. These codes often prioritize the use of recycled and locally sourced materials to reduce the environmental impact of transportation and manufacturing. They also encourage the use of renewable materials like bamboo and sustainably harvested timber, which can actually sequester carbon from the atmosphere as they grow.
It's like building with nature instead of against it.
Exactly. And just as important is avoiding materials that contain harmful toxins or volatile organic compounds, VOCs, which can negatively impact indoor air quality and human health.
No one wants to live in a sick building, no matter how energy efficient it is. So it's about creating a healthy indoor environment as well as reducing the environmental footprint of the building itself.
Precisely. And this focus on indoor environmental quality extends to things like natural daylighting and ventilation. These codes often encourage designs that maximize natural light and fresh air to create healthier and more pleasant indoor spaces.
Yeah, who wants to be stuck under fluorescent lights all day? Bring on the sunshine.
And natural daylighting can also reduce energy consumption by reducing the need for artificial lighting. It's a win-win.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from energy and water to materials and indoor air quality. It's clear that these green building codes are pretty comprehensive, but why should we care about all of this? What's the big deal?
Well, for starters, these practices are crucial for mitigating climate change. Buildings are responsible for a significant portion of global greenhouse gas emissions, so reducing their energy consumption and promoting the use of renewable energy is essential for curbing our impact on the planet.
Yeah, it's not just about saving polar bears, it's about preserving a livable planet for ourselves and future generations.
And beyond the global impact, green buildings offer a host of benefits for the people who live and work in them. They often have better indoor air quality, which can improve health and well-being.
Yeah, I definitely notice a difference in how I feel when I'm in a well-ventilated, naturally lit space versus a stuffy, artificially lit one.
And let's not forget about the financial benefits. Green buildings tend to have lower operating costs due to reduced energy and water consumption.
That's music to my ears. Lower utility bills are always welcome.
And these cost savings can benefit everyone, from individual homeowners to businesses to cities as a whole.
So it's not just about being altruistic. It makes good financial sense as well. But I imagine there are some challenges and considerations when it comes to implementing these green building codes, right?
Mhm.
It can't all be smooth sailing.
You're right, Drew. There are definitely some hurdles to overcome. One of the most significant is often the upfront cost. Green building can sometimes be more expensive initially, even though the long-term savings often make up for it.
It's that classic short-term cost versus long-term benefit dilemma.
Hmm.
And then there's the challenge of integrating these new green regulations with existing building codes, which can be a bit of a bureaucratic maze.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the human factor. Getting everyone on board, from developers and architects to policymakers and even residents, requires education outreach and sometimes a bit of persuasion.
Right? It's not just about changing the rules, it's about changing mindsets.
Mhm.
But if we can overcome these challenges, the long-term impact on our cities could be profound.
Absolutely. Cities that embrace green building practices are not just creating a more sustainable future, they're also creating a more resilient one.
Okay, urban explorers, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our discourse on green building codes. We've talked about what they are, why they're important, and some of the challenges they face, but we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore, from the specific technologies and innovations driving this trend to the inspiring examples of cities around the world that are leading the way. So stay tuned as we delve deeper into the fascinating world of green building.
We'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back to the Urbanist Lens Urban Explorers. We're picking up our discourse on green building codes, and I'm eager to dive into some more specific examples of how these principles are being put into practice.
Let's get concrete, or should I say sustainably sourced timber. Okay, all right, stop with the puns. But seriously, I think our listeners would love to hear about some real-world projects that are pushing the boundaries of green building.
Absolutely, and I think a great place to start is with a deeper look at what green building provisions actually entail. We've talked about energy efficiency and sustainable materials, but there's so much more to it.
Oh yeah, it's way more than just slapping some solar panels on a roof and calling it a day.
Yeah.
So spill the beans. What are some of the key elements that make a building truly green?
Well, one crucial aspect is focusing on the building envelope. That's essentially the outer shell of the building. The walls, roof, windows, and foundation.
Okay, so it's like the building's first line of defense against the elements makes sense.
Exactly. A high-performance building envelope is designed to minimize energy loss through insulation reflective roofs and even strategic placement of windows to take advantage of natural light and heat.
So it's not just about keeping the cold out in winter and the heat out in summer,
Mm.
but also about using natural resources like sunlight to our advantage.
Smart. And when it comes to energy efficiency, it's not just about the building envelope. Green building codes often require the use of energy efficient appliances, lighting and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning HVAC systems.
That makes sense. I mean, what's the point of having a super insulated building
Yeah.
if your old clunker of an AC unit is guzzling energy like it's going out of style?
Precisely. It's about a holistic approach, considering all aspects of a building's energy consumption. And of course, integrating renewable energy sources is a major part of the equation. We're talking solar panels, wind turbines, and even geothermal systems depending on the location and feasibility.
It's like turning buildings into mini power plants generating their own clean energy. Pretty cool.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about water conservation. Water is a precious resource, especially in urban environments, and green building codes address this in various ways.
Yeah, I've heard about things like low-flow toilets and shower heads, which seem like a no-brainer. But what are some other ways buildings can conserve water?
Well, one increasingly popular method is rainwater harvesting. This involves collecting rainwater from rooftops and storing it for non-potable uses like irrigation or flushing toilets.
It's like creating a mini water cycle right within the building.
I love that. And speaking of cycles, what about gray water recycling? I've heard that term thrown around, but I'm not entirely sure what it means. Gray water recycling is a fantastic way to further reduce water consumption. Gray water refers to the wastewater from sinks, showers, and laundry machines. Instead of sending it straight to the sewer system, it can be treated and reused for things like watering plants or flushing toilets.
So it's like giving water a second life before it goes down the drain. Clever. I'm sensing a theme here. It seems like green building is all about maximizing efficiency and minimizing waste. Would you say that's accurate?
You hit the nail on the head, Drew. It's about creating a closed-loop system where resources are used responsibly and waste is minimized. And this extends to the materials used in construction as well.
Right. We touched on sustainable materials earlier, but I'm curious to learn more about what that actually entails. What kind of materials are we talking about?
Well, first and foremost, it's about prioritizing recycled materials whenever possible. This reduces the demand for new raw materials and minimizes the environmental impact of extraction and processing.
So it's like giving old materials a new purpose?
Yeah.
Dig it?
Another key aspect is sourcing materials locally. This reduces transportation distances, which in turn lowers greenhouse gas emissions associated with shipping.
Think global, act local, right? Makes sense.
And of course, it's about avoiding materials that contain harmful toxins. We want buildings that are healthy for both the people who occupy them and the environment as a whole.
Absolutely. No one wants to live in a toxic box, no matter how energy efficient it is.
Another interesting aspect of sustainable material selection is considering the embodied energy of materials.
Embodied energy. That sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Embodied energy refers to the total amount of energy required to produce, transport, and install a material.
Oh, I see. So it's like taking into account the entire life cycle of a material from its origin to its final destination in a building.
Precisely. And some materials like concrete have a very high embodied energy, meaning they require a lot of energy to produce.
So even if a concrete building is designed to be energy efficient in its operation, the upfront energy cost of producing all that concrete might negate some of those gains.
Exactly. That's why it's important to consider the full picture when selecting materials for green buildings.
All right, so we've covered energy efficiency, water conservation, and sustainable materials. What other aspects of green building are there?
Well, one that's often overlooked but is incredibly important is indoor environmental quality.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, a building can be super eco-friendly on the outside, but if the air quality inside is terrible, it's not really a healthy place to live or work.
Exactly. Green building codes often include provisions for proper ventilation and air filtration to ensure good indoor air quality.
So no more stuffy, stale air in these green buildings.
Yeah.
Fresh air is a good thing.
Absolutely. And it's not just about air quality. Green building also considers factors like natural daylighting and acoustics.
Natural daylighting, I get. Who wants to be stuck under fluorescent lights all day? But what about acoustics? Why is that important?
Well, think about noise pollution. In dense urban environments, noise can be a major stressor. Green building aims to minimize noise pollution both within the building itself and from external sources.
So it's about creating a peaceful and tranquil environment, even amidst the hustle and bustle of the city. I like that.
And speaking of creating a more pleasant urban environment, let's talk about urban greening and biodiversity.
Oh, yes. The green part of green building, tell me everything.
Green building isn't just about individual buildings, it's about how those buildings interact with the surrounding urban fabric. And incorporating green spaces, things like green roofs, vertical gardens, and urban forests is a key part of that.
It's like weaving nature into the urban tapestry.
Exactly. And these green spaces provide numerous benefits from reducing the urban heat island effect to improving air quality to creating habitats for wildlife.
It's like bringing a touch of the wild back into the city. I love it.
And then there's the aspect of climate resilience, which is becoming increasingly important as we face the challenges of a changing climate.
Okay, so we're talking about building structures that can withstand extreme weather events, right?
That's a big part of it. Green building codes often include provisions for things like flood-resistant construction in areas prone to flooding and reinforced structures that can better withstand high winds.
So it's about creating buildings that are not just environmentally friendly, but also prepared for the future. That's smart thinking.
And it goes beyond individual buildings.
Yeah.
Green urban planning also considers things like walkable neighborhoods and access to public transportation to reduce reliance on cars and minimize greenhouse gas emissions.
It's about creating a city that's not just sustainable, but also more resilient and adaptable to the challenges of the future.
Exactly. Green building and urban planning are about thinking long-term and creating a legacy of sustainability for generations to come.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired right now.
Oh.
All this talk of green building has got me thinking about what the future of our cities could look like if these practices become the norm.
Yes, it's an exciting prospect to consider. Imagine strolling through a city where buildings are covered in greenery, rooftops are buzzing with urban farms, and streets are filled with people walking, biking, and enjoying the fresh air.
It's a vision of a city that's in harmony with nature, where sustainability is seamlessly integrated into every aspect of urban life. A city that's not just livable, but thriving. A city that's truly green in every sense of the word.
I think that's a vision worth striving for. However, we still have much to discuss about the challenges and opportunities of implementing these green building practices on a larger scale.
Right. It's not all sunshine and roses, even in the greenest of cities. But hey, we've got more discourse to come, so don't go anywhere, urban explorers.
Welcome back to the Urbanist Lens, fellow urban explorers. You know, as we've been talking about all these innovative green building techniques, it's got me thinking about a project I saw recently here in New York.
Oh, really? What was that? They're actually building an entire apartment complex out of cross-laminated timber. It's like this super strong engineered wood that's supposed to be as durable as concrete, but with a much smaller carbon footprint.
That's fascinating. You know, using wood as a primary building material is becoming increasingly popular in sustainable construction. It's a renewable resource, and it can actually sequester carbon, which helps mitigate climate change.
Exactly. And it just looks so cool, too. It's got this warm, natural aesthetic that I think people are really drawn to. It's like bringing the outdoors in, but in a really sophisticated way.
Well, it certainly speaks to a growing desire for buildings that are not only environmentally responsible, but also aesthetically pleasing and connected to nature.
Absolutely. It's like people are craving that sense of biophilia, that innate human connection to the natural world.
You know, Drew, that reminds me of a study I read recently that found that exposure to nature can actually reduce stress levels and improve cognitive function.
Really. So not only are green buildings good for the planet, they're good for our minds and bodies, too. That's pretty amazing.
It is, and it highlights the importance of considering the holistic impact of our built environment. It's not just about bricks and mortar, it's about creating spaces that promote human well-being.
Well said, Clark. Well said. Okay, so we've been painting this rosy picture of a future filled with green buildings and sustainable cities, but let's get real for a moment. What are some of the challenges and obstacles that we need to overcome to make this vision a reality?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles, as we touched on earlier, is often the upfront cost. Green building can sometimes be more expensive initially, even though the long-term savings often outweigh that initial investment.
Right. It's that classic short-term thinking versus long-term vision problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's where government incentives and policies can play a really important role.
Absolutely. You know, things like tax breaks for developers who build green or grants to help homeowners retrofit their existing homes with energy-efficient upgrades can make a huge difference.
It's about creating a system that rewards sustainable choices and makes it easier for people to do the right thing.
Exactly. And another challenge is the need for more widespread education and awareness about the benefits of green building.
Yeah, not everyone is as tuned into this stuff as we are, and sometimes the technical jargon can be a bit overwhelming.
You're right. We need to do a better job of communicating the value proposition of green building in a way that's clear, concise, and compelling.
And I think it's important to showcase real-world examples of successful green building projects so people can see for themselves that it's not just some abstract concept, it's something tangible and achievable.
Absolutely. Success stories are incredibly powerful. They can inspire others to follow suit and demonstrate the real-world benefits of sustainable building practices.
You know, Clark, thinking back to our earlier conversation about Basel and their green roofs, it's incredible how a seemingly small initiative can have such a ripple effect.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the power of innovative thinking and a willingness to challenge conventional norms.
And I think that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, pushing the boundaries of what's possible and finding creative solutions to the challenges we face.
Well said, Drew. Well said. So as we wrap up this discourse on green building codes, I think it's safe to say that the future of our cities is looking a little bit greener and a lot more sustainable.
I couldn't agree more. And to all of our urban explorers out there, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you found this discourse insightful and inspiring, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the urban landscape.